I had a great time making that Eddy character quest, and it seems like a lot of you had just as much fun watching it. So why not do something very similar? Good old Ed with 1D. Not a very well-rounded character, is he? He's the comedic relief character who's always up to something, but that's about it. Actually, no, that's not it at all. The comedic relief element of Ed's character is only the surface layer. Let's dig a little deeper and see what we can find. To put it simply, Ed has never grown up, and I'm not sure he ever will. Ed is a 7-year-old in a... how old are they again? 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. He's a 7-year-old in one of those ages' bodies. He fears basic hygiene like brushing his teeth or using soap. He loves low-budget monster movies that are full of nothing but mindless violence.
I said quiet!
He adores sugary snacks, and of course, he idolizes his friends and family. Let's start with his friends. Eddy and Double D are basically the entire reason that Ed exists. He wouldn't really get out of bed in the morning if it wasn't for them, partially because he'd be just fine sleeping in bed watching whatever crazy movie's on this week. But he lives and breathes for his two buddies. Whatever crazy scheme they get up to, or whatever wild way they try to make some money, Ed is totally on board. Granted, that's also because he has a very loose grasp of what's really going on, partly because to him, Eddy only yells and Double D speaks in science gibberish. But even so, the series makes it clear that he has at least some understanding of what he's doing, even if it is minor. And it's this minor understanding that leads to some of the deeper parts of Ed's character. Think about everyone's roles in the scams that go on in Peach Creek. Eddy's the charismatic frontman, Double D's the one who puts it all together, and Ed essentially does all the odd jobs that neither the other two are willing to do.
Dig a hole, dig a hole, dig a hole, dig a hole. Hey, mole boy!
He plays the most humiliating part, he's given the least interaction with customers, and he does a vast majority of the physical activity. Ed gets stuck with all of the worst jobs, but he doesn't bat an eye. He sees that it makes his friends happy, and therefore, he's happy. This goes all the way back to Bottomless Ed, where Eddy would have Ed eat literal garbage just for a quarter. Did Ed mind? Nope. Not back then, and not now. Ed kind of reminds me of Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. Neither of them are objectively smart, but the one level intelligence that they do have, aside from some niche trivia from some very obscure aspects, is emotional intelligence. They can see quite clearly how other people feel. And at the end of the day, their happiness is derived from their friends. And when this friendship is in jeopardy, or if something comes along to split them up, Ed can't cope. He tends to have the worst reactions. Take, for example, the Back to School episode where all three Eds have different homerooms. None of them are happy about this, but Ed takes it the worst. Ed already hates school enough, so naturally taking the two things that he looks forward to seeing every day would make it an insufferable experience. Let's face it, he's not gonna make honor roll anytime soon or make any school teams. What else does he have? Or how about Eddy and Double D's big fight in the Big Picture show? While Double D's storming off and Eddy's yelling back, Ed breaks down. He can't cope. Even if he's still got one friend left, he needs that other one to be truly happy. And seeing that one of his friends did something so terrible and effectively betrayed the other, makes Ed feel that all those wild adventures and fun times that they've had before can never happen again. And when everything turns out to be okay in the end, Ed immediately snaps back to happiness. All thoughts of any consequences back home, or the incoming cul-de-sac attackers have completely left his mind. His very little mind. It's all okay. Here and now, he's happy. What more does he need than to be happy? Perhaps the biggest example I can think of is A Fistful of Ed. Here, Double D, through a complicated series of events, is mistaken to be the new school bully. All the other kids, even tough ones like Kevin, cower in fear whenever they see Double D. Double D, of course, would never hurt a fly. But nobody else believes him, especially not Ed's mom.
We are friends no more! My mom says I can't be!
This breaks Ed's heart. All of the previous points I've made can apply here as well, but one thing I'd like to add that I don't really think that a lot of other people talk about is that Ed still didn't give up on Double D when he thought that he became a monster. Neither did Eddy, of course, but Eddy was trying to cash in on Double D's newfound street cred. Ed did not. Sure, he was still afraid of what Double D could do, but he didn't give up on him until he was forced to. I'll bet you're wondering, where does this sense of loyalty come from? Well, the way I see it, there are two sources for this. Firstly, it's his less than average intelligence. Because he's not all that smart, and let's be honest, his brain hasn't fully developed yet, Ed can only process emotions in extremes. He's never just happy, he's ecstatic. He's never just sad, he's heartbroken. And when he gets a pebble in his shoe, he's not just annoyed, he's an untamed beast. And it's this small amount of intelligence that leads to my second point, the one that I made earlier. He's still a kid. Okay, yes, technically all the Ed boys and the other cul-de-sac folks are still kids, but Ed more so. Yes, even more than Jimmy or his sister Sarah.
See? That's my lucky quarter, Sarah.
Jimmy and Sarah are still developed enough to have conversations with each other or take baths, but Ed seems to be permanently trapped in this 7-year-old mindset. One that, while endearing, is very concerning to his family. Oh yeah, that's right. I said I was going to talk about his family earlier, so I guess this is a good enough segue. Ed loves his little sister. His little sister does not love him. It goes without saying that Sarah's a brat and extremely annoying, and most of the other cul-de-sac kids don't exactly care for her antics. The one who should care the least is Ed. She berates him, physically attacks him, constantly tattles on him to their mom, and is generally a constant terror. But despite all of this, and despite fearing her actions, Ed is very protective over his
Baby sister!
Ed can only see Sarah as his sweet little baby sister. Again, much like his friends, as long as she's happy, he's happy. Although this time, it's not just because of secondhand joy. It's also because he doesn't want his life to be a living nightmare. As for his parents, that's something else entirely. We never get to see Mr. and Mrs. Ed on screen, but thankfully we have the series Bible to clear everything up. The main word I would use to describe these two is concerned. They're not really sure that Ed's going down the right path. Mr. Ed, not this Mr. Ed, this Mr. Ed. He's a used car salesman by trade and wants Ed to follow in his footsteps. But, Ed's not really the best salesman or worker in general. So it's up to Mr. Ed to constantly push this onto his son, hoping that maybe, one day, he can be inspired enough to turn his life around.
And Dad will just sit there and watch TV!
As for Mrs. Ed, there's already a lot of implications that she's kind of a neat freak, but she can't stand Ed's hygiene habits. His filthy room, his foul breath, his refusal to even brush his teeth. She constantly begs him to turn things around, but he just won't do it. She also takes a lot of Ed's drawings, Xeroxes them, and sends them to a therapist, hoping that she might be able to crack the code for what makes Ed, Ed. Honestly though, I can kind of see where they're coming from. Yes, Ed's a great guy, he's a lovable doofus, and he's one of the funniest characters on the show. But think about if Ed was real. Or, I guess, a more apt comparison, if you were in Peach Creek. Regardless if you were his friend or part of his family, wouldn't you be concerned for this guy's future? Double D is gonna be just fine. He's a genius. Eddy, while not necessarily a great student, has the gift of gab, and he's a real good showman. If he attaches himself to a reputable brand when he's older, he could be Salesman of the Year. As for Ed, his prospects don't look great. If he acts the same way as he did when he was 4, chances are that he might be in some serious trouble. In a lot of cases like Ed's, real life ones that is, parents will usually open up their home to this child, allowing them to have a home forever. Obviously, having cognitive disadvantages like Ed's would make finding employment or a spouse or a place to live on their own just about impossible. But the way that Ed's parents treat him, constantly trying to push Ed's dad's job onto him, and trying to change his behavior without getting to the real root of the problem, I don't think they would let him stay in the house as long as he needs. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they were the parents that, as soon as their kid turned 18, would kick the kid out of the house. Especially if Sarah pushed them to do it. They've always babied and preferred Sarah. Whatever she says goes. So if she wants Ed gone, he could easily be out on the street. But hey, maybe there's a silver lining to all this. It's possible that his friendship with Double D and or Eddy could end up paying off. When they're successful and established on their own, they could have a spare bedroom for Ed.
He is?
And the way I see it, Ed would be just fine with that, because that means no adult responsibilities, no adult expectations, and getting to spend time with his best buddies forever. But hey, I'm reading a little too deeply into this, so let's reel it back. If you've ever wondered what made Ed tick, well, here you go. He's a loyal friend till the end, even if he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's all heart, no brains. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? What's your favorite Ed moment, and hey, let's be more specific, what's your favorite Ed line? My personal favorite is the one where Rolf is homesick and Ed comes up behind Eddy and says, "Rolf's homesick, Eddy." And Eddy goes, "Where'd you come from?" And then Ed goes, "Blame my parents, Eddy." Makes me laugh every time. But what about you? Comment below and let me know, because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. And now it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon people, starting with our Masters of Fate. Chan 11, Diego V, Kev Messick, Manny Paredes, MD the Dude, Ryan Williams, Timey, and Woody Woo. And now, our executive producers, Aaron Vasquez, Albert Robinson, Blackjack, Edward Haas, H.R. Hoffman, I Am Vove, Indiscreet One, Ravioli Supremo, Unkale, Who Else But Zane, and YouTube Milkwad. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then why not consider donating to the Patreon? There's a fancy little link in the description below for you to check out. And if you want to get more involved in the Media Mementos fan community, we've got a Discord server. There's also a link to that in the description as well. Alright friends, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time.
Damn, Daniel!